read a card to you real quick while they're being seated. So thankful that the Lord made you so thankful for your kindness too. Thanks to our church family. Thanks for all the prayers, visits, cards, calls, and food that was brought to us. You are the best. Love to everyone, Sally and Steve. So I'll hang that up on the bulletin board, but just wanted to read that. He left it up here, or somebody left that up here, so just thought I'd let you know. Now don't forget, Center Shot, 5:30 this evening. Now what's that mean? You've got a conflict. There's a conflict of interests that are going to take place this evening. Steve's not here, so we can talk about this freely. We can all come out of the closet right now. You don't have to hold back. You don't have to worry about offending any Duke fans. What time does that game come on? 4:30, 4-ish? I don't know what time it is. Straight up 4? 4:05. 4:05. So you're going to have to record it. So when you walk in, I have to leave the house much earlier than you. I don't live across the street like you do. So we have to leave the house much, much earlier. So when you come in, and somebody needs to call Bill Zorn as well. Somebody needs to let Bill know that when he walks in this evening, don't mention the game. We're going to put a sign up. I have to record the game and watch the whole thing when I get home, okay? Just like you'll have to watch the majority of it because you're going to come to Center Shot. Nobody else will know. We won't say a word about it. It's off limits, okay? Shh. No mention. We can talk about the other games, but just not the Cats game going on against North Carolina. Now, on the other hand, if you have tickets to this evening's game and you need somebody to go with you, I'm available. Plenty of time to get there. Galatians chapter 6. Kathy, I didn't know you were such a big UK fan either. So don't let the cat out of the bag this evening either. She was asking me all about the game a couple of weeks ago. I didn't know she was into the game. But Galatians chapter 6, a few years ago, several years ago now, but when the Navy SEALs captured, shot Osama bin Laden, there was an article written about the SEALs, and there wasn't a whole lot known about them. And as you look back now, you see all these documentaries, you see stories about them, you see movies about them now. History Channel just finished up a little season on what they called Six, I think was the name of it, but it was about a SEAL team and some of their operations, hypothetical operations. But after they shot Osama bin Laden, there was an article written about who they were and what type of men made up that group of military experts. The Wall Street Journal interviewed a retired SEAL, and they asked him some questions. They said, "Who are the Navy SEALs, and what type of man? What man makes the cut to be in this elite group of people?" And I really think that you see these documentaries, and I think really about only 10%, if that maybe, of the people that try out for this group actually go on to finish it. So the guy that was being interviewed, he told them, he says, all types of people try out for the SEALs. He said you have professional boxers, you have professional wrestlers, you have collegiate athletes, collegiate stars. He said you have track stars, rugby guys, NFL guys. He says you have all these professional athletes, these elite collegiate athletes, champions that have tried out and they don't make it. So they said, what does it take to make the cut to be in this group? He said those who seem impossibly weak at the beginning of SEAL training, men who get sick on runs, men who had trouble with pull-ups, they made it. Men who were skinny and short, whose teeth chattered just looking at the ocean, he said they made it. Some men who were visibly afraid, they made it. Almost all the men who survived had one common quality: in great pain and facing the most immense trial of their life, they had the ability to step outside of their own pain and fear and ask, how can I help the guy next to me? The clue to making it was looking beyond their own circumstance and asking, how can I help the guy next to me? Those men had to look beyond their self. They have a big heart, and they had to look beyond their self and see what the situation of their neighbor was. 2,000 years ago, before the seals, Paul comes and he says, this is what the church mission needs to be. This is what the church needs to look like. The church needs to look like a group of people that are looking beyond their own hurt, their own pain, their own fear, and saying, how can I help the guy next to me? That is our ability. We have that ability to do that, to move beyond our own pain, to move beyond our own agenda and ask, how can I help somebody else? So we come to Galatians chapter 6. There are 5 things here in this chapter that Paul says the church should be doing. Last week we looked at one of them. Today we're going to look at another one of them. So verses 2 through 5 will be our main text for today. So the first thing he comes here and says in verse 2, he says, bear. Now see if you see a contradiction here in these few verses. Bear one another's burdens and thereby fulfill the law of Christ. For if anyone thinks he is something when he is nothing, he deceives himself. But each one must examine his own work, and then he will have reason for boasting in regard to himself alone, and not in regard to another. For each one will bear his own load. Now, do you see a contradiction? Is there something that's going on? You say, hey, that's a red flag. It sounds like one thing is saying something and another verse is saying something else. Well, look back at verse 2 and compare it to verse 5. Do you see something that throws up, says, hey, what's the difference here? Bear one another's burdens, and then verse 5 says, for each one will bear his own load. So which is it? Am I supposed to bear your burden, or am I supposed to just take it to myself and not share it with you? There is a difference. There's a difference in the Greek text. The Greek text in verse 5, it says, for each one will bear his own load. The other one was bear one another's burdens. This bear his own load, this load here that is used in verse 5, load and burden are different. And we're going to see that we need to be about bearing one another's burdens. We each have a load that is ours to carry as well. So the word that is used for load in verse 5 is phortion. It's the word that's used for a backpack. In Rome, the Roman soldiers would have carried a backpack with them. It would have had their supplies in it, maybe a sleeping bag or whatever they needed to do their job would have been in their backpack. So the word was phortion. And so carry that. It's something you carry. You carry that with you, your own supplies, just like our military. You ever watch one of those shows? What do these military guys have? They have a backpack that, I don't know what that thing weighs, 60, 70, 80 pounds, but it has all of their supplies that they need to do their operation. Whatever their specialty is, they have that in that massive backpack they carry. So that's their load to carry. And that's what Paul is saying here. He uses that word. You carry your own load. Your own, it's a heavy load that you carry. And we all have heavy loads. So what does that look like? How is that applicable to us today? Here it is. You get up tomorrow morning, whatever time it is you get up to go to work or do whatever it is you do. But let's just say you get up at 5:30 in the morning. You get up at 5:30 in the morning to get ready to work for work, and that's a load. You got to carry that. It's a bummer. You have to wake up. You have to get going. You have to shower. You have to shave. You have to dress. You have to put on the clothes. That's your personal load. That's a load. Now, here's the thing. If you leave here after church this evening, You leave here after church this evening, and you go out and you stop at the Dairy Queen, you buy a Blizzard, and you sit at the Dairy Queen and you eat that thing, and then you go home and we watch Kentucky play tonight, and you stay up and you're all jacked up over the game, and you're excited whether they win or lose. I mean, if they win, you can't go to sleep. If they lose, you're going to be ticked off and you can't sleep anyway. So you lay there in bed until 2 a.m., and then finally at 2 a.m., you doze off. And what happens at 5:30? That cursed alarm clock goes off. And what do you do with that alarm clock? You reach over there and you hit snooze. And it goes off again 5 minutes later, snooze, snooze, snooze. And the next thing you realize, you finally wake up and you say, I'm late for work. You jump in the shower, you throw your clothes on, you speed down the road, you get a ticket on your way into work, and when you finally get into work, the boss says, hey, you're late again. This isn't going to cut it. Since you're late again, we're going to have to let you go. And you think in your mind, this is a burden. This is a burden. It's not a burden, it's a load. What you need to do is you need to get out of bed. So everyone has a load to carry. So load and burden are different. Now here's a burden. The family goes home after church tonight. They watch the game or whatever it is they do. They skip the game. They get in bed. Everybody wakes up on time. They roll out of bed. They have cereal for breakfast in the morning. The kids get their clothes on. They hop in the car with Dad. Dad drops them off at the school on his way to work. And as he's driving on his way to work, he has a tragic automobile accident. The ambulance is called. He's life-flighted to a hospital. And Mom gets the word, and they say he's in a coma state and he's not going to come out of it. And Mom has to make the decision about removing life support from her spouse. Now that's a burden. That's the burden. We all have loads to carry every day, and some of us carry burdens as well. Sometimes we do come up against burdens and we carry them. See, when we come to Christ, it does not exempt us from burdens. Paul went through burdens. Moses went through burdens. But how can we have victory over such burdens? Verse 3. Or what keeps us, might be the question to ask. What keeps us from having victory over burdens? What keeps us from leading somebody else to victory over their burden? You see the difference. We each have a load to carry. Sometimes our loads are self-inflicted. Other times, massive burdens come our way. But how can we help one another carry their burden? For if anybody thinks he is something when he is nothing, he deceives himself. So what keeps us from sharing burdens? What keeps us from having victory over burdens? Pride does. Pride keeps us from conquering these burdens. Why don't we bear one another's burdens? Because of pride in our life. Now remember the people that Paul was talking to. These people had thought that they had this special knowledge. These Judaizers had come in to the church, and they were saying, yes, it's Jesus plus something else. It's good that you have Jesus, but you have to follow this other stuff as well. So they're saying, hey, we have this special knowledge. We come from the mega church in Jerusalem, so when we stand up here and teach, you've got to believe us. So they're confused. They're confused and they're falling for what they're saying. And not only are they saying that, they're also teaching that, hey, because of this grace, that gives us the opportunity to sin more. So the people that are hearing this are really confused. But Paul comes in there and teaches them. He says, look, you need to be about this ministry of sharing one another's burdens. See, sometimes we get so proud that we look down on other people. You're not like me. You don't dress like me. You don't work where I work. And we think, oh, I'd never do that. Or we see them get involved in something. We see the outside world. We see them get involved in something, and we think, well, I would never act that way. I would never be involved in what they're doing. I would never commit the sin that they are committing. You better watch out, because when you say something like that, you're setting yourself up for failure. Look at Nehemiah. I'll just read it to you. It'll be on the screen. Nehemiah chapter 3, verse 5. These people had pride. Moreover, next to him, the Tekoites made repairs, but their nobles did not support the work that was going on. You know about Nehemiah, building the wall. He's distracted at one time or another. People are coming up. Nehemiah has asked people to be responsible, to really bear, to really shoulder some of this burden of building the wall. Hey, you people that live around the wall, you take the part that's behind your business or behind your house. You refashion that wall. You put it back up. And what's Nehemiah have? Nehemiah has distraction after distraction after distraction. People are coming in. And what do these nobles do? These nobles come in and they say, hey, we're not going to take part in this. They come in as a distraction. They're not a part of shouldering a burden. What do they say? Hey, these nobles are saying, we're too important. They had too much pride. We're too important to be about sharing a burden of somebody else. These people aren't like us. They're not as wealthy as us. They don't look like us. They don't dress like us. We have a position that we're proud of. We can't be seen with these common people. I've got a degree. I've got a reputation at stake here. I can't get dirty. I can't get my hands dirty serving in the body. I can't get my hands dirty building this wall, sharing a burden. I can't. See, we think when that person is so messed up in their life, I can't really dig down into their life because I'm going to get wrapped up in this. I'll get dirty with them. It's too much time. That's what we would say. Well, that's too much time. It's too much time for me to invest in their life to inquire, how are you doing? Because when we ask, how are you doing, we really don't care. We just want you to say okay and walk on by. What if somebody said, you know what, I woke up this morning and it's really not good. Or I had a doctor's report and it's really not good. Or my marriage is floundering and I need somebody to go to a marriage conference with me or point me in the right direction, send me to a counselor, go with me to a counselor, drive me to a counselor to get my marriage back on track. I need some help. If somebody told you they needed help, what would you do? You say, well, that's not what I want to hear. I really didn't expect you to say that. So I think, I don't have time to get dirty with this. I don't have time to bear your burden because we think our load is more important. Well, I've got this load. You have a load because you stayed up too late last night doing whatever it was, and now you've got a speeding ticket and you've lost your job because you continue to do it every day in, day out. We don't like it when somebody has a burden. So we think we're something. We think we have a degree. We think we're too important to be involved with somebody that has a burden. I don't have time to invest in that person's life, in their burden. And when you begin to isolate yourself, you're going to find that you yourself live on an island. Verse 4. But each one must examine his own work. So we don't like that. We do not want to examine our own work. We have a problem with that. Examine my own work? You've got to be kidding me. But I'm very good at examining your work. Don't examine my work, but let me examine somebody else's. See, that's why, I don't even know if this show's still on, but when I say his name, you're going to understand. That's why we like shows like Jerry Springer. because we see these shows and we see these people that are all messed up on these shows. And we think, well, it's a good thing I'm not like them because look at me. I've got my act together compared to those people that show up on Springer. We compare ourselves to these messed up people and we say, I look pretty good. But verse 4, Paul says each one must examine his own work, not the work of the people that are on Springer. Or then we look at the Kardashians and we think, well, compared myself to the Kardashian life, I'm pretty good. Matter of fact, I'm borderline super holy compared to them. Paul says examine one, but each one must examine his own work. See, we look at the sins of other people that are sitting around us, or maybe that we go to work with, or maybe that we know of, and we think, well, I am in good shape compared to them. Paul does not say compare yourself to anybody else. Paul does not say measure yourself up against those on Jerry Springer. Paul does not say if you measure yourself up against the Kardashians and you're still doing pretty good, you're okay. Paul doesn't say measure yourself against Miley Cyrus or anybody else in Hollywood. Paul says measure yourself against Jesus Christ. Verse 5. See, if you measure, but if each one examines his own work, then you'll have no reason for boasting in regard to yourself. Verse 5, for if each one will bear his own load, it means every single one of us, our focus should be on Christ. What is our standing before Christ? Will I be able to say, when you stand before Christ, you're not going to be able to say or have an excuse to say that, thank goodness I was not like those yahoos on Jerry Springer show. You won't be able to wipe the sweat from your brow and say, I just skated right in because I don't look like these crazy people that have flipped their lids. Jesus is going to say, I'm not interested in the people on the TV show. Jesus is going to look at you and say, I'm interested in you. Jesus is going to say, I'm not interested in you comparing yourself to people at Olive Baptist or in the Olive community. I'm not interested in you comparing yourself to people in your own family. Jesus is going to say, I'm just interested in you. Let's just look at you. So how do we develop a heart? How do we develop a heart for bearing one another's burdens? Because that's what he says in verse 2. Bear one another's burdens and thereby fulfill the law of Christ. Now, what is the law of Christ? The law of Christ is the new commandment. The new commandment is what? Love one another. Let me read Isaiah to you. I believe as I was reading this, that whenever you see the law of Christ, you can make a mental note or mark down new commandment. Love one another. That's the law of Christ. But let me read Isaiah to you right here, chapter 53, verses 4 through 6. Let's see what Christ carried for you. Let's see what burden Christ took for you. And if Christ took such a great burden for you sitting here today, what can you do for somebody else? Surely our griefs he himself bore, and our sorrows he carried. Yet we ourselves esteemed him stricken, smitten of God, and afflicted. But he was pierced through for our transgressions. He was crushed for our iniquities. The chastening of our well-being fell upon him, and by his scourging we are healed. All of us like sheep have gone astray. Each of us has turned to his own way. But the Lord has caused the iniquity of us all to fall on him. Jesus took your burden to Calvary. And if he carried your burden to that place for you, can you not by grace help another person? What's some practical ways? And you might want to write this down. You might want to jot this down on the back of your bulletin here, but maybe 5 things here. something practical that you can do tomorrow or this afternoon to help somebody carry a burden. And do you know what I'm going to tell you? It doesn't include memorizing one verse. You do not have to be a Bible navigator. You do not have to even know how many books of the Bible there are or what page number a verse is on to get you through this. But something I learned this week. How can we help help others carry a burden? Number one, we can focus. Focus on them as they share the story with you, that your focus is not to solve their problem. You don't have to solve their problem. Focus. Summarize. You're going to come to them, you're going to focus, you're going to say, tell me your story. Share with me. When that person walks by you, and you say, how is your day? How are you doing? And they actually do tell you something, focus and say, well, let me share with me. I want to hear. Second thing is summarize. So this is what you've said. Is this right? This is what I'm hearing. So you still haven't shared with them a verse or anything. And then the third thing is you're going to want to invite them to continue. You focus, you summarize, you invite them to continue, because after a moment, after they've stopped you, after you've asked them, how are you doing, and they actually do begin to tell you something, after about 60 or 90 seconds, they're going to think, well, you're not interested in this. You don't want to hear this mess. You didn't really ask for this. But you tell them, hey, I would like for you to continue. Share with me. So you still haven't shared a scripture. The fourth thing, you want to ask them to unpack what God is saying. What is God saying to you through this? Do you recall anything that God has said in His Word to you about this situation that you're in, about the circumstance that you're going through? Do not ask them, how do you feel? Because your feelings and emotions will lie. But what you do ask them is, what has God's Word said to you? Have you prayed to God? Has God responded to you in any way? Is there a verse that comes to you in your remembrance for a time like this? So you're helping them unpack what God is saying to them. Here's the last thing you clarify. So this is what I've heard you say. You have a struggle at the workplace. You have a struggle with mom or dad, with a spouse, there's trouble in the marriage, whatever it is. When you listen, you begin to bear one another's burdens. When you begin to listen, that's what takes place. When you listen, you shoulder another person's burden, and when you set aside your pain and your own agenda, you can then ask, how can I help the guy next to me? Just like in that SEAL training, the people who survived were those who said, how can I help the one next to me? When you begin to shoulder another person's burden by having an interest in them, begin to ask, how can I help this man or this woman next to me? Also, that's one of the things we're supposed to do. Are you doing it? Are you doing it as an individual? Are you doing it as a church? Are we doing it as the body of Christ? Are we interested in sharing the burden, sharing the load with one another? I mean, you're going to think I'm nuts, but I'm going to share this anyway. Chad, I'm about ready for that video. There was a gentleman at the church that we used to go to church with, and he always had back problems. Always had backache. Took injections or steroids or something like that. I don't know, but he'd go every few months, get a shot, and it'd get him by. But as that thing started to wear off, he would be really down. And stupid me, I went up to him one time and I said, man, I really wish I could take some of that pain for you. It wasn't too much long after that that my back hurt. And I don't know. Well, you think I'm stupid. I don't know. Coincidence? I'm not so sure. Was God teaching me something in that about carrying one of those burdens? Possibly. But that's what I've attributed it to. Maybe my simply saying that, maybe it did relieve him of some of his pain, because he continues to work today. Show that video. You'll enjoy this video if it plays. Little penguins here. These little penguins are in their home doing whatever it is they do, and this is a video that was shot over an extended period of time, but it's fast forwarded. And you see the penguins moving around. They're blowing it up right there because the penguins, they are in their home right there, and it is anywhere between 60 and 80 degrees below zero, and 100-mile-an-hour wind is faced upon these little guys. These are all the male penguins right here, and they are carrying around an egg, either an egg on their foot or their little baby on their foot, and they're protecting it. The mom goes off for 2 to 3 months at a time to go grocery shopping. She goes and gets the food. Now, how would you men like that? Honey, where are you going? I'm going to the grocery. See you in about 2 or 3 months. But that's what happens right here. So these little penguins are left, these little men, because you men know how hard it is to care for these little kids anyway. So imagine these penguins, they're taking care of these babies, this egg here, 60 to 80 degrees below zero, 100-mile-an-hour wind. What they do is they huddle up, and that's what you saw in that big inset, that big blow-up right there. They huddle up into these groups, and they begin to move together. They put their head down, they hunker down together, and they move. They take little steps. That's what you're seeing, little steps. And that group grows. They take little steps. The inside of that group reaches up to 98 degrees. From negative 60 to 98 degrees on the inside. And what happens? The ones on the outside, they're taking the brunt force of this. They're taking a beating. But what happens is the ones on the inside, they begin to move outside. And the ones on the outside begin to move on the inside. Penguins are showing and modeling what it would be like to bear one another's burdens just for a time. So think about those penguins right there. That's nature's way. That's God's way of showing what the church should be doing. We should be saying, hey, come in here, guys. Come in here, guys. Come in here where it's warmer. You work yourself. Come on in here. Come in here with me, and we'll get in here and get warm. And then when we get refreshed, we're going to go outside and we're going to protect somebody else. And we're going to bring them back in to the place where it's warmer, where it's safe, where their pain, where their injury can be mended. That's what our church should be doing. That's what we should be doing throughout the week. We might take might take some of the force off of somebody else as we shoulder, as we bear one another's burdens. I'm going to ask you to bow your head. We should all be moving together. Just as you saw those little penguins, they all huddle up. They all move together, taking small steps, creating a warmth in that pack there as they huddle together, recharging one another so that they can look to the person on their left and the person on their right and say, how can I help the next guy? Take the focus off of you. Take the focus off of your circumstance, your issues, your struggle, your fear, your pain. Take that focus off of you and look, how can I help the next guy or gal or teenager or young person? God, who this week am I going to come up beside and that they need help? If we as a church can come around you and hold you up, then let us do that. Maybe you want to come forward this morning and pray for somebody. Pray for somebody that you know that's going through a struggle. You say, I'm going to take my eyes off of myself right now in the circumstance I'm in, and I'm going to focus on somebody else. Maybe you want to come pray for them this morning. Need you have in your life, you want to intercede for another person. Step in for them. Begin to help them by just listening to their struggle. Whatever need you have, or however you want to lift it up to God for somebody else, the altar is open. I'm going to ask you to stand as we sing this last song together.